Our conversation on Emerson, graduate of Harvard, poet, essayist, intellectual, philosophical mind. This is his chapter 3 on beauty. The eye is the best of artists. By the mutual action of its structure and of the laws of light, perspective is produced, which integrates every mass of objects, of what character soever, into a well-colored and shaded globe, so that where the particular objects are mean and unaffecting, the landscape which they compose is round and symmetrical, and as the eye is the best composer, so light is the first of painters. There is no object so foul that intense light will not make beautiful, and the stimulus it affords to the sense, and a sort of infinitude which it hath, like space and time, make all matter gay. Even the corpse hath its own beauty. But besides the general grace diffused over nature, almost all the individual forms are agreeable to the eye, as is provided by our endless imitation of some of them, as the acorn, the grape, the pine cone, the wheat ear, the egg, the winds and forms of most birds, the lion's claw, the serpent, the butterfly, seashells, flames, clouds, buds, leaves, and the forms of many trees, as the palm. So the eye is the best artist. That's true. If you think about when someone says like, "Oh, you got an eye for that," "Oh, he's got that eye," I find this very philosophically true and empirically true, and it gives a lot of credit to human creativity. And so the laws of light, I like that. That's a new term that I haven't really read. So you think about it, like light can shade something to make it even more beautiful. I think that is very apparent when it comes to trees, and you're laying down, and then the way the leaves play in the sunlight can be very beautiful. So I agree with that. And what else? He goes here to say that even the corpse hath its own beauty. And many of us might say, what? Death can never be beautiful. But I start thinking about funerals, right? And when a body is, like when you go to a morgue, the embalmer, the caretaker of the funeral home, is going to ask you a lot of questions about how do you want the body to be presented. You choose the clothes, right? They have different methods for keeping the mouth shut. They can stitch it, they can glue it. They have different methods for keeping the eyes closed, and they try to make the corpse look, not like, ah, like, ah. So, yeah, I agree that even a corpse has its own aesthetic. Even a skeleton, really. So, I like to, sometimes when I'm stressed out, I do walk amongst graveyards, and I like to look at the tombstones and the mausoleums, and even the walls where they keep the cremations, right? The way it's structured in and of itself is very calming, because it makes you realize, like, there is an end. Your bills will not follow you to the grave. Take advantage of every day. Realize what's important. Don't get too caught up in pop culture, consumerist culture, and selfishness. So, indeed, he mentions a corpse can be beautiful, but I would extrapolate on that and build upon it by also saying that the cemetery, a place that is filled with death, can also be beautiful. And he talks about forms being agreeable to the eye. The tombstones in and of themselves, I would argue, aesthetically, are very beautiful to the eye to look. I've seen a lot of videos, I've watched a lot of videos of graveyards of Scotland, and some that are like really old. It's very beautiful. So it's stunning. And then he continues, the simple perception of natural forms is delight. The influence of the forms and actions in nature is so needful to man that in its lowest functions it seems to lie on the confines of commodity and beauty. To the body and mind which have been cramped by noxious work or company, nature is medicinal and restores their tone. So when he talks about noxious work, Whew, I've definitely had some jobs where I was like, this is purgatory. I don't want to be here longer than any second that I have to. And then as soon as you leave those buildings, and then you just feel that breeze, you hear a tree, you see a flower, you're back out into the elements of the universe. It feels so good. And I would definitely agree with him that, and he says cramped. So it's like, think about people in cubicles. It's one reason why I try to avoid working in a cubicle as much as possible, because you're literally like you feel like a mouse within a maze, and you're just crammed in there like sardines. And even though you can kind of cut out noise, you can't really, and you just kind of feel like you're in a coffin. And for a lot of people, especially if they're in San Francisco and the building is not engineered to be earthquake proof, you kind of are in your own cramped coffin waiting to die, because if that roof caves in on you or a certain power line catches fire and the building catches fire, you will die inside. So the body and mind being affected by a cramped, noxious workspace is definitely empirically true. And philosophically, something that a lot of people have spoken on, and I myself have written a lot of meditative poetry about it. So I can see where he's coming from. And saying that nature is the medicine, why do you, and if people don't think so, why do so many people spend money on going on vacations? And they don't just go on vacations to, their local city. Usually they go somewhere that's beautifully nature wise. So like Hawaii. Some people will go to, now when people go to Rome, that's a little different. They kind of want to see the architecture. But many will travel to Peru to see the wonderful Andes Mountains and see the structures of Machu Picchu. When they go to Mexico, they'll go to Mexico City, but they might also tour the Mayan areas where the ruins are and enjoy the jungle. And the jungle in and of itself is a fantastic beauty to behold. So I definitely could see how people immersing themselves in nature is something that will heal you. And what do therapists always say to their people? It's take a walk, go for a walk, go for a hike, go camping, go swimming, right? So I can definitely see where they're coming from. And he continues, the health of the eye seems to demand a horizon. And that he continues that the eternal calm can come from the sky and the woods, and that when we see a horizon or the woods, a beautiful form of nature, we too can feel a sense of calm. And boy, oh boy, I pretty much live by what he's saying. And when I started reading him, I just thought his work was so beautiful and true. And if only more people could get out of the congested city and back to nature, and making sure at least once a week they get around some form of nature, I think a lot of people would be happy. I really do. What about you? What do you think about what he's saying about nature? Do you enjoy being in it or not? Would you value nature more than the city? The stars? How can we incorporate more of nature into our lives to test his theory? I know I will try. I will try to test his theory out, even though I already feel it. I should immerse myself more in nature. I think we all should. Now, on my own philosophical note, I think there's a lot of people who are so immersed in like the city life that they start to develop maybe more of a void, and maybe that's why pharmaceuticals have become so popular. For a number of reasons they've become really popular. But I've had this idea in the back of my head that people who live in the city too much and forget about the beauty of nature, and they may not even see a tree for a long time, they'll turn more to big pharma, Percocet, I forgot, Zoloft. No, Zoloft's a sleeping one. It's on the tip. Zoloft, Percocet, Molly, oxycodone, Oxycontin. There was another one. I can't remember it. But mind altering prescription drugs that are used usually for anxiety and depression, people now have been taking those to kind of suppress this inner despair. And I've talked to a lot of people who, when they go out on a nice hike or they go see the Grand Canyon, something sublime. Remember in the previous videos, he talked about the sublime force of nature, how they feel rejuvenated. And I know I've felt that with Muir Woods. I had a professor who felt that with Niagara Falls. And many other people try to make it on their bucket list to have some type of, cool natural nature experience, whether that's surfing, right? Whether that's seeing a real volcano, something in that route, immersing ourselves in the world as a form of medicine. So maybe we could reduce Big Pharma's profits if we spent more time in nature. Hopefully, that'll be the greatest medicine.